Hi, I'm Billi Maddox and I'm gonna mess this up so that you don't have to. So I started off like any other project, sand, clean, and prime. This is a resin cast, so I only really needed to scuff up the surface to get going. This is something I'll probably repeat 50 times in this video, but I paint in dust passes, trying to get everything, but not returning to a spot if I missed a spot. I can get that in a second pass. At this point, I check to see if I have any rough spots or any pits I need to fill in, anything like that. My helmet is gray and burgundy in the end, but I wanted the burgundy areas to chip to black and my gray areas to chip to burgundy, so I hit the mandibles, ear caps, and vents with matte black. This might look super weird right now, but this is what my brain needed to visualize what I was doing at this really early stage. Now onto liquid latex masking of the black areas, after it's had plenty of time to cure, of course. There's two important things I'm always reminding myself about this process. One is apply the latex thick, but keep in mind the outline of the shape. What you see is what you get, but if you have a thicker latex blob, then it's easier to see in the next step with paint over it and easier to peel up. Second is think about why you may have gotten that battle damage and where it is, how it relates to other bits of damage, where it makes sense to have some, and where it makes sense to not. It's really easy at this point to just add blobs and scrapes indiscriminately, but the damage should tell a story. For instance, I have a gash near my left eye that travels up into the dome, but also one that goes across both mandibles. I try to connect them, not literally, but that they travel in similar directions and patterns. I work slowly. I like to give my paint ample time to cure and harden. For me, there was no rush to finish this, as the process itself is what I enjoy, so there's about a week in between each application of paint. It's just how I like to work and what works for me. Now, I mask the ears off and the middle section of my vents in the back and hit everything with the burgundy. Again, if you see areas I've missed, it's because I'm going to let them dry and hit it with another coat to catch those missed spots. The worst thing you could do is let your too much gene take over and go back and spray over wet paint. This is a surefire way to get drips and even crackling. People think paint mishaps are mostly environmental, and sure, that can factor in, but I would argue overspraying is the #1 cause. I'm gonna cover the entire mandible and visor area in the next step, so I decided to peel my masking so that I could see where the next step of masking should go. I also wanted to see what the ears look like because I hadn't fully decided what I wanted to do with them yet, but I eventually retaped the ears. Even with light and even passes, because of the shape of something, you could still get drips. Here you can see some in the cheeks of my helmet where I was probably trying to get into that angle, but no worries. This will be hit with the gray later, so I sanded it a bit, and the gray went over top. Eventually, the weathering will hide all the crimes. Now I mask my burgundy areas. To me, there is no dirty without a bit of clean, and no damage without a bit of pristine. It's hard to see at this point, but I'm using the mandible damage to inform where the other damage should be. I'm thinking about where I would bump my head if I fell, where would I get pelted with rocks if I was near a blast, where there would be no damage at all because other pieces of the helmet would shield that area, like above the ears or in the deepest part of the cheeks. So now I've laid down more liquid latex and masked up again so that I can hit everything with gray. The gray will chip to burgundy. This is a good opportunity to mention I always give my cans a warm water bath about 10 minutes before painting. This ensures the finest mist possible. Also, I always spray a bit onto cardboard before spraying my project to make sure the cap is clear and not spurting. Keep your hands moving and spray in light mists. You can always do another coat. Resist the urge to get it all in one. Trust me. Now I've got my main helmet color down. Time to remove some latex and see how my chipping is doing. The lower cheeks will get remasked in slightly larger areas than what you see now because they will be a lighter gray. The chipping on there will go to dark gray and then down to burgundy. I'm also adding 2 light gray stripes that end in this little Easter egg stencil. I used one of my stickers as the stencil by cutting out the color blocks and leaving just the outline. For the stripe, I sprayed it on, and while wet, I dabbed it with a tape ball and added some scratches with a wire brush, like a barbecue grill brush. I followed the lines of my damage so it would look like these are the very last grazes of some kind of hit that created damage. At this point, all of my main painting is done. And though it looks damaged and chipped, it looks super clean, so it's very odd looking. Also, I added quite a bit of chipping to the bottom edge of my helmet, thinking this is an area that gets a lot of contact through taking it off and setting it down on rough terrain, stuff like that. The kill marks I did just like the stripe, masked, tape ball, and wire brush, with the added use of ripped up tape to create ratty edges. This, I think, is an actual paint layer on this helmet, so it would rub and chip off relatively easy. Now to reveal the vents and ears. Burgundy frame with matte black vents. I'll hit these with rub and buff on the high areas to denote wear. I also opted to hit the ears with rub and buff and added some accent colors, leaving some areas matte black. This is where the fun begins, and where the helmet will start to look real. My first pass of really runny washes are sprayed on. I use a mix of burnt siennas and drab greens for this mix and just a tiny bit of black. I spray this mix on, let it drip, I dab some off, I wipe some off. This is the freeform jazz part where you kind of just let things happen. This is super runny, so if you're quick and spray it with clean water, you can completely remove something if you don't like it. I do this in many passes, letting things fully dry in between, then adjust the bottle mix and go again until I'm happy. This is where your low areas should get the most wearing. That's where dirt and grime and mud should collect. I want it to look like maybe I've been splashed with mud and there's been some attempt to hastily clean it, so there's wiped streaks, but also I'm looking for dried spotting and ringing, and this can be done with the very popular Copic alcohol inks method to an amazing degree, but this is how I do it. Also, I should mention, I do this all while the visor is in, so that the visor picks up some grime in the corners and recesses. I'll then clean with a clean damp rag, only where I need to see out of. I didn't show where I added the little metal connector on the cheek, but you'll see later how it'll look like grime collects around it and drips down from it. Now I do a more detailed brushed on wash pass. This mix tends to be thicker than the sprayed one and applied more deliberately to areas that need a little more attention. This mix should run a bit, but it shouldn't really drip. This is where I pay special attention to pockets and really low areas, like around the ear caps and in the deepest part of the cheeks, around the brow ridge, all of that. Now, onto my final pass, which is my metal pass. Since the chipping on this helmet were relatively smaller areas, I opted not to do a chrome or metal base at the start. I knew I wanted to complete the layered effect in this way since all the areas would be smallish. I used a tester's enamel chrome for this pass, paying special attention to the direction of all the scrapes and bumps. This goes almost everywhere I applied the liquid latex, but in much smaller shapes to show all the layers. I keep the brush dancing as I want it to look organic and not fully filled in. I also added some highlights to the rub and buffed areas with the tester's enamel. And that's the bucket finish, though I think I'll do a boomboxing powder pass. A Fuller's Earth pass. And I'd like to add some scorching around the bigger metal chips with Tamiya weathering powders, but I'm not in a rush for that. This is done in my eyes, but I'll keep the option open for if the mood strikes me. I hope this was a little helpful. I'm not the best at this, so I wanted to share what I did to maybe inspire you and give you some confidence that if I could do this, you can too. I believe in you. I'm always available for any and all questions, so hit me up. Thanks so much for watching.